In a previous video, you've seen how I've set up Photoshop's color management system. Now, we also need to make sure that Adobe Camera Raw, the raw processing engine, is also set up in a way that we want it to work. So we have the three programs, Adobe Bridge here, where we sort all our images. We have Adobe Camera Raw, where we process our images, and then we have Photoshop, where we finally render the images into a JPEG file format for entry into the pictures to actually show. So setting up Adobe Camera Raw, so we're in Bridge at the moment, we can go to Edit, Camera Raw Preferences, but these are also available within the Adobe Camera Raw interface. So that's what I'll do. Rather than doing it from here, we'll go to the Camera Raw interface for a start. So I'll just select an image, any image will do. Control R will open up Adobe Camera Raw, and there you can see the version that I'm using here. It tells you the camera that was used to capture the image, and it gives you a few bits of information about the image there. I've already processed this image. You can see the slides have moved around a bit, but we need to set up Adobe Camera Raw in a way that we want to operate. Okay, so first of all we can go to here, and these are the preferences that were also available from Bridge, from the Bridge interface. So I'm just going to run through some of these up here. So we've got General, Save Image Settings in Sidecar XMP files. You've got an alternative to save it as a centralized database. I always select Sidecar XMP files so that the adjustments are attached to the main raw file via an XMP file. So the raw files aren't actually touched at all. Any changes that we make here are, say, attached to the side of the raw file as an instructional file called an XMP file. Sharpening 2. We can apply sharpening, or in our case pre-sharpening, just a modest amount of sharpening to the images within Camera Raw. Now, unless you've got all images selected, if you just say preview images, it'll give you an indication of the kind of sharpening you could have had within Adobe Camera Raw, but it will not apply that sharpening when you send it to Photoshop. So I can't really see the point of this, so I'm just going to make sure it's got all images. So any adjustments we make in here to the detail panel, any sharpening that we apply will actually be applied to the image when we send it to Photoshop. You've got Apply Auto Tone Adjustments. I always have that unselected. That's for color images. I usually find that if you have auto tone and we've got the same sort of auto tone here, button here, which is grayed out at the moment, but I always find that there's too much clipping in the shadows and the highlights when I select auto tone for the sort of images that I take. That one there, Apply Auto Grayscale Mix when converting to grayscale, that's quite a useful one to have. So if you're converting an image to a black and white, using our black and white panel here, it's useful to have an automatic adjustment applied just as initial beginning stage. I'll leave the rest of these unticked. Camera Raw Cache, you can tell Adobe Camera Raw where you want the cache to be stored, and I've got mine stored to a dedicated hard drive, F Camera Raw Cache there. If you don't have that selected like that, select your own location, then it will be stored to an automatic default location. DNG file handling. If you've converted your images to the DNG file format, then these will be applicable to you, and you can embed in JPEGs to different sizes, medium or full size. Ignore Sidecar XMP files. This isn't really valid if you're using Adobe products, but it just means that another external editing program that can handle DNG files may attach the adjustments as an XMP file rather than saving it to the file header, which Adobe Camera Raw and Lightroom does. So just leave them as I've indicated there. JPEG and TIFF handling. Now this is quite important. Adobe Camera Raw, as the name suggests, is a raw processing engine. Okay, so it's designed to process raw files before sending the image to Photoshop, because Photoshop cannot open a raw file. It needs a rendered bitmap image, and that's what the Camera Raw processor does. However, if we look down here, we've got JPEG and TIFF. Camera Raw can process, using all these sliders that we use for the raw processor, it can also process JPEGs and TIFFs if you so wish. And this is a really good way of doing it if maybe you've done scans of slides and save them as TIFFs, or if you haven't got any option but to save your images as JPEGs in your camera, because all of the adjustments that you make in here are saved as instructions to the JPEG or TIFF file. They do not actually alter the basic bitmap pixels. So it just attaches information as how to interpret the JPEG or the TIFF image. And of course you've got a really powerful and intuitive interface here. So if you are using JPEGs, or you've maybe scanned your slides in TIFFs, then it's useful to have automatically open all supported JPEGs, rather than the default is disable JPEG support, okay, which means that you cannot then use Adobe Camera Raw to process a JPEG file. So that is the default setting, like that. But say if you do wish to use this program to process JPEGs and TIFFs, just select automatically open all supported JPEGs. That one there, automatically open JPEGs with settings, means it will only open a JPEG or a TIFF file if you've already processed it within Adobe Camera Raw. Okay, so open all supported if you wish that function to be enabled. Down here we've got a fairly new little option, performance. So if you've got a decent graphics card in your computer, then Adobe Camera Raw can make use of that processing power for certain of its tasks. So if you've got the option, try and tick it, and if it ticks, it's gone and identified my graphics card that I've got installed there. Okay, so I've been able to utilize that. The other main setting is the workflow options down here. Now I've covered this before, but I think it's worth just going through again because this is so important. Once you've processed your image within Adobe Camera Raw, you then send the image to Photoshop for final rendering. Well, at least that's the way I work. Now the settings, the workflow options here determine how that image, the attribute of that image, when it's sent to Photoshop. Now these are my usual settings. So whenever I'm doing a print, I will have the color space set to ProPhoto RGB and a bit depth of 16 bits per channel, and that is how the image will appear in Photoshop with those attributes. Now Pictures to Exe will only accept JPEG files or PNG files, but JPEG's preliminary, and a JPEG file is only an 8-bit per channel file. So unless you're going to do a lot of work on the image in Photoshop, I'd suggest you select 8 bits per channel and the sRGB color space. So when this image is now sent to Photoshop, it will have the sRGB color space attached and 8 bits per channel. So all we'd have to do then is crop the image, final sharpen, maybe apply a border, and save it as a JPEG file in the folder that you want. Okay, so by doing that, we've already done quite a bit of work, and these are sticky settings. So this will be applied to every image that you've subsequently sent to Photoshop until you decide to change it. And again, if you're going to do a print, your own print using your own inkjet printer, then I'd suggest you use the ProPhoto RGB color space, which is probably hidden all the way down here now because it's gone in alphabetical order. So Pro Photo, RGB. Oh no, this case it's actually put it at the top. Pro Photo RGB, but yeah, and 16 bits per channel. But for pictures to XE, sRGB, 8 bits per channel. So click OK. You can leave the resolution at 72 for this. Okay. So now, once we've processed our image, we can send the image to Photoshop. And this is happening in real time. And now, if we look in, we're in Photoshop now. If we look in the info panel here, and we can determine what is shown down here by going to the panel options, okay, and you can decide what information you want to see. But down here you can see the pixel dimensions, and here we've got sRGB, so that is the color space that's been applied to this image, 8 bits per channel. Okay, so we now know that that image is virtually ready for saving as a JPEG file once we've cropped it and final sharpened it and done any other little things that maybe we want to do to it, such as getting rid of spots and things like that. So that is how we need to set up Adobe Camera Raw.